Welcome back to the deep dive. It seems like a lot of people are really interested in this whole idea of saying no.
Yeah.
Like, how do you find that balance between being a team player at work, but also staying true to yourself?
Right.
We've got some great materials to go through today, including this book by Dr. Sunita Saha.
Yeah.
She's a psychologist and a professor at Cornell. The book's called Defy: The Power of No in a World That Demands Yes.
I think it's something a lot of people are thinking about these days.
Yeah, and one of the things that really stood out to me was
Yeah.
this point about how much we comply even when we know something's wrong.
Yeah, that's something that really jumped out at me too, actually. Like she talks about that study
Oh,
with
right.
the healthcare workers.
Oh, yeah, the one where
Yeah.
they're asked if they would speak up if a colleague made a mistake.
Uh-huh.
And it was like a pretty significant percentage that said they wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Kind of alarming.
Yeah.
When you think about it, like especially in healthcare.
Especially in a field like that where patient safety is on the line.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty scary. And it's not just healthcare. She talks about it happening in other fields, too. Like,
She mentioned airline crews.
yeah, airline crews. Like, people are just hesitant to speak up even if they see something that's not right.
Yeah. I think it makes you wonder, like, has that ever happened to you
Oh, absolutely.
at work?
Yeah.
Where you felt like you should say something, but you didn't?
You feel that pressure to just go along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Saha really digs into why that is. And she gives 3 main reasons why we struggle with defiance.
Okay, yeah, what are they?
The pressure to conform, the misunderstanding of what defiance actually is, and then just a lack of skills in expressing dissent effectively.
Right. So we don't even know how to say no.
Yeah, exactly.
In a way that's, constructive or helpful.
Right.
We're so conditioned to be good.
Yeah.
And follow the rules. But that can be a real problem, especially in the workplace where you need people to speak up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If everybody's just focused on being a team player, how can you ever point out problems?
Right.
Or challenge things?
Or innovate.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if everybody's just doing what they're told, how do things ever get better?
And that's where she brings in this concept of the defiance hierarchy.
Oh, yeah.
Which basically says that some people have more freedom to say no than others.
So like someone who's in a leadership position might feel more comfortable speaking up than someone who's more junior.
Exactly. And she argues that that can be a real problem.
Well, yeah, I mean, that seems a bit unfair. It shouldn't matter.
Yeah, it really should be about the concern itself.
Right, yeah. It's not about your title. It's about, if you have a legitimate concern, you should be able to voice that.
And that unequal, defiance privilege, as she calls it, it can really stifle things.
Yeah.
Like it can really stifle innovation, and it can create some unhealthy dynamics within a team.
So where do you think you fall in this hierarchy at your workplace?
That's a good question. I've never really thought about it like that.
Yeah, it's something to think about. And how can we use that awareness to maybe empower ourselves to speak up a little bit more, even if it's a little uncomfortable?
Yeah, it's about understanding that you do have a voice and that you have something to contribute. It's not about being disrespectful. It's just about, expressing yourself. And that brings us to another really interesting point that Dr. Saha makes, which is that we need to challenge this whole idea of no being negative.
Yeah, he's really refraining that.
Yeah, it can be a real force for positive change.
She even has this quote in the book that really struck me. She says, "More crimes are committed in the name of obedience than rebellion."
Wow.
It's a powerful statement.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
It really makes you think about, what are we really saying yes to? And what are the consequences of that?
Right.
So how do we shift that perspective? How do we start to see no as a tool for good?
Well, one of the things that Dr. Saha talks about is applying this concept of informed consent from like the medical field to our everyday decisions.
Now, how does that work?
So, you know how when you go to the doctor for a procedure, they don't just say,
let's do it.
Yeah, like hop up on the table.
Right.
Right. They explain what's going to happen, the risks, the benefits, the alternatives.
Yeah.
And she's saying we should approach everyday decisions with that same kind of awareness.
So it's not just about saying yes because somebody asked you to do something. It's about really understanding what you're getting into and feeling empowered to say no if it doesn't feel right.
Exactly. It's like having that same informed consent in every area of your life.
It's like a checklist you go through. Okay, do I understand what I'm getting into?
Yeah.
Am I comfortable with this?
Exactly.
Do I feel pressured? Like all of those things that they go through in the medical field. It's about applying that to, these daily interactions.
Right.
It seems like a really helpful way to think about it, especially in those situations where you feel pressured to just go along with something.
Oh, yeah. For sure. It really allows you to pause
Yeah.
and make a conscious choice.
Yeah.
But, even with all that, saying no can be really tough.
Oh, absolutely.
There's that fear of, rocking the boat, you don't want
Yeah.
to disappoint people, or even, jeopardize your career.
Right, all those fears.
Right.
How do we get over that?
Well, Dr. Saha acknowledges, she doesn't shy away from the fact that it can be uncomfortable.
Right.
She even tells a story in the book about a professor who didn't speak up during a grant review process. She felt like the applicants weren't being treated fairly.
Wow.
But she hesitated to say anything.
Yeah.
And later she really regretted it.
I can relate to that feeling of regret.
Yeah, it could be a real sign that we're not being true to ourselves.
But then what about, on the other hand, what about the times when you do say no and it doesn't go so well?
Right.
Like it causes tension in the team?
Yeah.
Or it makes you look difficult. How do you deal with that?
That's a good question. I think that's where we get into the cost of complying all the time.
Oh, interesting.
We're so worried about what will happen if we say no
Right.
that we don't think about what happens if we just keep saying yes.
It's almost like we create conflict within ourselves
Right.
by trying so hard to avoid conflict with others.
Exactly.
Dr. Saha talks about that, right?
She does. She says that constantly going against your values can really lead to burnout, resentment. You start feeling fake, like you're not being true to yourself.
Yeah, I can see that. Like you're just kind of stuffing down all of those feelings.
And in the long run, that's not good for anybody.
Plus, you're not really solving the problem.
No.
It's like that saying, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're reading your own integrity.
You're chipping away at it, yeah.
But what if saying no does make things worse?
Well, she argues that the long-term benefits of just being honest
Okay.
outweigh the discomfort of saying no.
Right.
In fact, she talks about this thing called the defiance domino effect.
Ooh, what is that? Tell me about the domino effect.
Basically, she says that when one person is brave enough to say no, it can inspire other people to do the same.
Oh, I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, and she tells this story about her own mom, who she always saw as super compliant. But there was this one time when her mom stood up for something she believed in.
Yeah.
And it was this small act of defiance, but it really showed her
Wow.
that you don't have to be this super outspoken person to make a difference.
It's so interesting how, sometimes it's those quiet acts of courage that
Yeah.
really spark a change.
And when we start to see no, not as a bad thing, but as a way to protect our time, our energy, our values,
Yeah.
it can be really powerful.
So it really all comes back to that idea of informed consent then, right?
Yeah.
It's about making choices that are in line with what you believe in.
Exactly.
And she gives those 3 questions to ask yourself, who am I?
What type of situation is this?
What was a person like me do in a situation like this?
Yeah.
Those are good questions. I feel like if I really sat down and thought about those,
It could be really powerful.
that would be really helpful. It would be almost like a little meditation
Yeah.
before you make a decision.
Take a deep breath. Think about those questions.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes.
It's like building a muscle.
Exactly.
And it doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing either.
No, sometimes it's just a not right now.
Right.
Or a let me think about that.
I'll get back to you.
I need more information.
Yeah, exactly. It's just about finding a way to communicate your needs in a way that's authentic and respectful.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle. They think they have to, get all worked up about it.
Yeah, like it's going to be this confrontation.
Right. But it can be so simple. Like sometimes the best no is actually a yes to something else.
Oh, I like that. So instead of saying no to taking on an extra project,
Right.
you say, yes, I can help out with this other thing.
Exactly.
It shows that you're still a team player.
Right. You're still committed.
But you're also being realistic about what you can handle.
And your own well-being. Right.
Isn't that what being a team player really means?
Yeah, it is.
To be honest about your limits so that you can actually contribute in a way that's sustainable.
And Dr. Saha talks about the role of the manager in all of this.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Like creating a workplace culture where it's safe to say no has to start at the top.
Makes sense. If you feel like you're going to get punished for speaking up,
right,
then you're probably not going to do it.
So what can managers do to make it safer?
Yeah, what can they do?
Well, first of all, they have to be willing to walk the walk.
So they have to model that behavior themselves.
Yeah, they have to be open to feedback, even when it's hard to hear.
Right.
And they have to make it clear that it's okay to disagree, to have different opinions.
So it's about creating that psychological safety.
Exactly, where everybody feels comfortable sharing their thoughts.
That sounds great in theory, but I imagine that's hard to do in practice.
It is. It takes work.
Yeah.
But the benefits are huge.
Okay. What kind of benefits are we talking about?
Well, for one, you get better decisions. When everyone feels safe to share their perspective, you're less likely to miss important information.
Right.
Or just go along with the crowd.
Yeah, you get that diversity of thought.
Yeah, and you also get more innovation. People are more likely to take risks.
Yeah.
If they know they're not going to be shut down.
Right. Like you said, it goes back to that team player idea. But it's about being a team player in a way that allows everyone to contribute.
Exactly. And ultimately, it just makes for a happier workplace.
Right. When people feel heard and respected, they're more likely to be engaged and motivated.
And that benefits everyone.
So it's really a win-win.
Yeah, it is. But it all starts with having the courage to say no. And being willing to create a space where that's okay.
And recognizing that feeling when something's not quite right.
Yeah. Like Dr. Saha says, that tension is a signal to stop and ask yourself those questions.
Who am I? What type of situation is this? And what does a person like me to do in this situation?
Exactly.
It reminds me of that other thing she talks about.
Oh, yeah.
Her friend's advice. Unless it's a hell yes.
It should be a no.
It should be a no.
It's such a good rule of thumb.
It is.
It really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Like, are you truly excited about this? Or are you just kind of going along with it?
And if you're hesitating, what's causing that?
Yeah.
Is it your values?
Is it a lack of information? Or maybe it's just not the right time for you.
Right.
It's about recognizing that no is not a rejection. It's just a redirection.
Yeah.
You're saying no to this thing to create space for something else.
That's a great way to put it.
It's been so great talking about all this with you.
Yeah. This has been a really good conversation.
I feel like I have so much to think about now.
Me too.
Do you have any final thoughts you want to share?
Just that this is a journey. It takes time to get comfortable with the power of no. But the more we practice it, the more we create a world where it's okay to be authentic.
Right.
To be true to ourselves.
I love that. Wow. It's amazing how much ground we've covered. This whole conversation about saying no has really, shifted my perspective on things.
Me too.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a lot more empowered, to set those boundaries and make choices that actually feel good to me.
Yeah, and it really comes back to that feeling, that inner tension.
Oh, yeah.
When something doesn't feel quite right.
Right, like that hell yes test. If it's not a hell yes.
It's a no.
It's a no. It's so simple, but it's so powerful.
Yeah, it really is. And it's about recognizing, that saying no isn't a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength.
It's about protecting yourself, your time, your energy.
Yeah, and your values.
And what I really appreciate about Dr. Saha's work is that it's not just about, individual empowerment.
Right.
It's about how our choices can impact others, too.
Yeah, it's about creating a ripple effect.
Inspiring others to speak up, to be more authentic.
To create a better work environment for everybody.
It's been so great talking about all this with you.
Likewise.
I feel like I have so much to think about now.
Me too.
Before we wrap up, any final nuggets of wisdom
let's see.
you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think the main thing to remember is that this is a process. It takes practice to really embrace the power of no.
It's not going to happen overnight.
Right, exactly. But the more we do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
And the more we create a world where it's okay to just be ourselves.
I love that. So to sum all this up, here are a few things to keep in mind. First, remember those 3 questions from Dr. Saha. Who am I? What type of situation is this? And what does a person like me do in this situation?
It's such a good framework.
It really is. And second, don't be afraid to embrace that hell yes mentality. If it's not a resounding yes,
it's a no.
It's probably a no. And finally, remember that saying no is not selfish. It's an act of self-respect. It's about setting those boundaries, protecting your energy so you can show up as your best self.
In all areas of your life.
Well, that's it for this deep dive into the power of no. Until next time, keep diving. 2614.